And the only 7 o'clock game, we're going to have 3 7:30 games. We're going to have 2 8 o'clock games that are going to matter in playoff contention. But the only 7 o'clock start for playoff eligible football teams is arguably the biggest of the day. And it's the last undefeated versus undefeated matchup of the day. We got number 20 Kentucky, who's 5-0. Traveling number 1 Georgia, who's also 5-0. Georgia favored by 15 on ESPN. Not as big of a spread as you would like to see if you're a Georgia fan. Devin Leary has not been playing phenomenally well football. Not the football that Kentucky fans expected to when they brought him in. He's gone 82 of 142, thrown for 1,129 yards, 10 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. But he had an awful day against Florida that was just bailed out by Ray Davis having the game of his life. Ray Davis now has had 76 carries for 594 yards and 8 touchdowns through 5 games. Tavion Robinson has had 19 catches for 308 yards and 3 touchdowns. Carson Beck for the Georgia Bulldogs got 116 and 161, thrown for 1,497 yards, 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Dacian Edwards on the ground has had 51 carries for 260 yards and 5 touchdowns, and Brock Bowers had 30 catches for 413 yards and 3 touchdowns. Georgia's 62 and 12 all time against Kentucky. Last 13 games have been Georgia. From 2010 to 2022, they have won every single time these two teams have played. Last two of these 13 games have been one possession. Most of the time, Georgia's dominating Kentucky. I don't think that's the case this year. Because this is the tale of two different football teams that looked two very drastically different ways last week. Kentucky was a team that was 4-0, and I thought it was a weak 4-0, right? They'd beaten an FCS opponent in Eastern Kentucky barely. They'd played a close game against, I think, Ball State week 1, at least for the first half. And then they destroyed Akron the next week. Again, none of these just are like an amazing victory in my eyes. They did destroy Vanderbilt the week before, but again, that was Vanderbilt. So how are you going to do against an actual football team? Because Florida was an actual football team. They destroyed them. Kentucky looked like the much, much, much better football team. They exerted their will on the ground. Ray Davis looked like the best running back in the entire country. It was an outstanding performance by Kentucky. Their offensive line pushed Florida's strong defensive line backwards a lot. That was a really good Florida run defense before that game. You compare that to Georgia. Georgia is the number 1 team in the country. Georgia going to Auburn. This was an Auburn team that's struggling. They don't even know who their quarterback is, right? Is it Peyton Thorne? Is it Robbie Ashford? No one knows. They're playing both. And once a team starts playing both quarterbacks, that is a death sign. That is a sign of a very bad football team. They kept it close with Georgia. They were winning against Georgia for the vast majority of this football game. Was Auburn up on Georgia. Georgia ended up coming back. They win the game mainly because Brock Bowers is an insane man, and Carson Beck actually started to make some nice passes. But it exposed what we all kind of know, is that this is a week 1 in Georgia. This is not the best team in the nation, not in my opinion. I'm going to be talking about what I think is the best team in the nation in the next video, but I don't believe Georgia's the best team in the nation. And not only that, you're talking about one of the best run teams in the nation in Kentucky, right? They're running the ball at a very effective rate. Their offensive line's pushing back defensive lines. You're talking about one of the worst run defenses in the SEC, which is something you wouldn't think about saying about Georgia, but they are letting up a lot of yards on the ground, and I mean a lot. Kentucky is a really good running team game. Georgia has a really weak run defense. Kentucky's defense is stout. And every week I like to pick one big upset. It feels wrong to not, right? I think this is my big upset. Give me Kentucky to go on the road. Give me Kentucky to go to Athens and beat Georgia. Kentucky's going to be the team to beat in the SEC this year. Kentucky looks like a possible playoff contender. Give me Kentucky to beat the number 1 team in the nation.